So in this tutorial, we're going to work with Mach3D's simulation module to set up a spreadsheet interface to Excel that will allow us to take data from Excel, use it in our model, and then return data to Excel. So for this example, we're going to be building a tailings dam, and we want to raise that to different crest elevations, pour tailings, and then calculate our tailings volume, our dam raise volumes, and our pond volumes. So to define the interface, we can go to the simulation menu and define a new Excel model. So we give it a name. I'm just going to call this simple deposition. The sheet name, when we add this and integrate this with an Excel spreadsheet, it's going to create a tab or a sheet called Mach3D interface. That's fine. You can also create a settings tab for some static data if we want. That's optional. And we want our data set to be in columns, not in rows. We have the option of getting data from the user at the start of every simulation that we run. So we're going to add a single row here, and we want to get a file, and we're going to call it our base grid. So this is going to be the starting grid that we use for our simulation. Next is our spreadsheet inputs. So this is the data that we're going to define that we want to read in from Excel. So I'm going to create some rows here. I'm going to create 3 rows. The first data type here is going to be text, and it's just going to be the run name. So it might be run 1, 2, 3. It might be, we could have elevation 110, elevation 115, and whatever we want. Next is we're going to define an input, which is a floating point number or a decimal number, and that's going to be our crest elevation for the dam. And then we're going to define another decimal or floating point number, and that's going to be our pond elevation. So this is the data that it's going to be expecting to get from Excel. Next, we define the outputs that we want, and I'm going to add some rows here. Add 3 rows. So my first output is going to be my dam raise volume. The next one will be my deposition volume. And then the final one will be our pond volume. There's another tab here for settings. So the settings is just an additional sheet that we can have in our model that we can define some static values that we might not want to change from run to run. They'll be the same ones for all runs. I'm going to leave this blank for now. And then I will hit OK. And so when I hit OK, it's going to create a file in my working directory with the extension .xlmodel. And if I just right click and edit, this is actually a bit of Python code. If you're using Notepad++, you can get it to be formatted as Python by going to the language tab or language menu and go down to Python. I've got mine set up so that it automatically recognizes the .xlmodel files as Python. So this is just a bunch of boilerplate code that's created that will allow our script here to interact with Excel. And so there's information here about getting the different inputs and the outputs, the data that we request from the user, so our base grid. And then down here, the main thing is going to be the execute function. And so this is what is executed at every time step, taking the data that we get from our inputs, so our run name, our crest elevation, and pond elevation. And then we assign our output values down here. And then somewhere in here, we need to write something that does stuff. So the next thing we want to do is we want to take this spreadsheet and we want to add it to an Excel model. So I'm just going to right click and explore here, and in here I'm going to right click and new, and I'm going to create a new Excel spreadsheet or worksheet, sorry. I'm just going to call it deposition, and then I will open that up. There's my empty spreadsheet. So what I need to do is I need to take this Excel model and integrate it with this Excel spreadsheet so that it sets it up in the way that Mach can work with it. So I can do that in the simulation menu. Set up Excel model. I'm going to go down here and choose my deposition sheet. My Excel model is going to be my simple deposition Excel model. I want to generate the input-output tab, and I don't really care about the settings because I didn't define any of those, so I can just hit OK. And then when I come over back to my spreadsheet here, we've got our basic input-output values set up here. So we've got our run name, crest elevation, pond elevation, then dam raise volume, deposition volume, pond volume for the outputs. And so what we can do is we can populate this with appropriate values so that they're read in from Excel. We need to still modify our script here so this execute function does something, because at the moment it's just going to assign these values of 0 to the output. And then we'll have a model that can run. So I'm just going to enter in some dummy data here, just for a single time step. So my run name is 1, crest elevation 120, pond elevation 115. I'm going to save that, and then I'm just going to run this model. So I can do that using simulation run Excel model. So the spreadsheet I'm going to interact with is going to be the deposition spreadsheet. The Excel model I'm going to work with is a simple deposition Excel model. I'm going to run all the occurrences. We're not going to worry about these other fields down here for now, but I hit OK. It's going to ask us to choose a base grid. It's not going to do anything with that, so I'm going to come back up here to my introduction folder. I'm just going to choose my output grid and hit OK. It's going to do something, but we're not going to see anything because we haven't told it to do anything. But if we come back to our spreadsheet here, we can see that the output values are now have been set to 0 for each of these fields, because in our script here, they're being set to 0. So I'm just going to change this to 10, 9, and 8. I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to run this model again, and I should see that now it's populating the values, those values in the spreadsheet. So I'm just going to right-click last value for all fields, hit OK, right-click last value for all fields for my base grid, and it will run. Then when I come back to my spreadsheet here, I can see I've got 10, 9, 8. So this is how we set up the basic interface between Mach3D and Excel. What we're going to do in subsequent tutorials is show you how to actually make this model do something productive. Thanks.